Some of you guys have seen that I'm basically operating as a one-armed man lately. Some of you know the story. Some of you guys don't know the story. So in this podcast, I'm going to outline what happened and where we go from here. So tune in and listen up.
Welcome to the CrossFit Edwardsville Community Podcast, where we hear and learn from our coaches, CrossFitters, and Glen Ed community leaders. Now, here are your hosts, Dallas and Greg.
Guys, what's up? Coach G here at CrossFit Edwardsville. So if you follow me on any of the socials, you've probably seen pictures and videos of me basically operating as a one-armed man these last several weeks. And some of you guys know the story, some of you guys don't. So I want to take a moment in this podcast and outline for those who maybe don't know the full story or what happened. I want to give an outline of what the heck happened to my arm and what was the solution? How are things going? Where do we go from here? And my milestones going forward, because hopefully my story isn't just useful to me. Hopefully it's useful to some of you guys, because maybe you guys are going through something as well. One of the things that I believe that my life, my example can hopefully show some other people how to navigate difficult circumstances, difficult times. Maybe I can lift you up in this moment, because if you're going through some stuff right now that's making it tough for you to live your healthiest and best life, stick to an exercise routine, whatever, maybe this story here can inspire you in some way, or if nothing else, just fill in the blanks for you, because maybe you're just curious to know what's going on. So let me give you guys first the background of what happened to my shoulder. Back in 2014, I believe it was, I did a Go Ruck Tough event. And at that event, we carried a telephone pole for several miles, which was the most miserable experience of my entire, I use the following term very carefully, very loosely, athletic career, given that I was never getting paid for exercising in the first place, but definitively the most miserable physical endeavor I've ever done was carrying that telephone pole. Every time we picked it up was a 1 rep max deadlift. Every time we took it from waist to shoulder was a 1 rep max hang power clean. And it was just absolutely terrible. When we were carrying it through the streets of St. Louis, I could feel my shoulder, because we had the telephone pole, myself and the others that were doing the Go Ruck Tough civilian version of military training, which, if you don't know about Go Ruck, it's basically a civilians are invited way of experiencing what military or special forces training can be like. And you spend a half a day overnight doing a lot of stupendously physically difficult things. Carrying the telephone pole is one of them. But anyway, as we were carrying the telephone pole with it on my shoulder, I could feel the structures of my shoulder tearing, but I wasn't going to step away from the telephone pole, because I knew that the weight that I was carrying of the telephone pole, let's just say I was carrying 200 pounds on my shoulder. That 200 pounds, if I wasn't carrying it, then all of my friends, the people who were doing the Go Ruck with me, they'd have to carry that weight for me. It'd be spread across all of them. Now they're all carrying more weight because I'm not there. So I refused to step away from the telephone pole, but I could feel my shoulder tearing while we were carrying it with the pole shouldered up here. And at the end of the event, my shoulder was so compromised that I needed help to lift my arm overhead at all. After that event, it took several months and gradually rebuilt my shoulder, its strength, its flexibility, its capacity. But I knew that my labrum was compromised then. I just didn't really know to what extent. Then, about 2 years and change ago, 2 years, 4 months ago, I was wrestling and had a rough landing on the mats and I dislocated my shoulder inferiorly and compromised the labrum further. To those of you guys who maybe don't know what the labrum of the shoulder is, the labrum is a cartilaginous soft tissue support structure that in this case, it helps to hold my upper arm bone, my humerus, in the socket. And when I compromised it a little bit at the go ruck, my shoulder was able to move south, my humerus able to move south out of position in my shoulder socket. When I dislocated it 2 years ago with the bad landing on the wrestling mats, it compromised it further. So the floor basically of my shoulder was further compromised. And then on February 7th of this year, I was doing some very basic weightlifting in the gym, some strength work, overhead squats, medium weight, a weight that I've lifted 1,000 times before. And the lifts were going really well until my left shoulder, the labrum, just kind of gave out. My shoulder floor basically fell through. My humerus fell out of socket. To me, in the moment, it felt like my humerus dislocated antero-inferiorly, forward and down, 3 inches out of position. It probably wasn't that serious, that dramatic of a distance, was how it felt. And this time I required help to put my shoulder back in place, to replace it into the socket. And so when my humerus fell out of the socket this time, it also tore a few of my muscles on its way out. So then I had a completely smoked antero-inferior labrum, and 3 out of my 4 rotator cuff muscles were also torn. This was all confirmed on a MRI arthrogram. Imaging basically demonstrated the exact nature of the compromise in my shoulder. And the only way, this is getting now to the solution for the problem, the only way that I was going to regain stability in my shoulder and the ability to do rigorous physical activity again would be to have a surgical repair of my shoulder. Understand that in the weeks after I had the dislocation the final time on February 7th, my shoulder function returned pretty steadily. And I'd say by March, April, if you were watching me go about my everyday activities, you probably couldn't tell that anything was going on with my shoulder, because I could do all what we call ADLs in therapy world. I could do all of my activities of daily living, all ADLs, just fine. They were all pretty easy. What I couldn't do, or what should not do, was like rigorous physical activity on my left shoulder. I had to withhold or hold myself back from doing anything really rigorous that might re-dislocate my shoulder. And so looking forward, if I wanted to regain the ability to wrestle and grapple and lift heavy weights, do strength work in the gym, live a really, really, really active lifestyle like I'm used to doing, I was going to require a surgical intervention to basically regain the structural integrity of my labrum so that my humerus would not fall out of socket again and tear muscles again. I needed a surgical intervention to regain the stability that it would take to get back to doing all those more rigorous physical activities. But it's going to be a very long road. If I go to do that surgery, it's a long road to get back. In fact, the way that I had to, basically the decision was this: I can go about the rest of my life and I'll be able to do all regular activities with no problem, but I'll constantly have a little ghost in the system with my shoulder that anything rigorous or aggressive that I should ever do would have a very high likelihood of recurrence, re-dislocating my shoulder and making the damage that was in there already worse. So I could either go the rest of my life with a governor on the speed that I could go, proverbially speaking, a significant amount of activity restriction, or I could have a surgery and then for the next 6 months to a year, take a couple steps back, basically give or sacrifice or lose the next 6 months to a year post surgery in rehab and recovery in exchange for getting the next 50 years of my life and regaining the opportunity to do more rigorous physical activity once again. When I thought about it that way, I was willing to make the long play the long game, and sacrifice the next 6 to 12 months as a way of eventually earning back the opportunity to do very rigorous physical things that I love to do. I love to wrestle. I love to do submission grappling, jujitsu. I like to do kickboxing. I like doing CrossFit. I like lifting weights. I like being strong. I like being able to do lots of physical activity around the yard, lift heavy stuff, and do all of that with basically no limitation. I will get almost all of that back if I'm willing to do the surgery. So on April 22nd of this year, which as of right now is somewhere between 4 and 5 weeks ago, I had that surgery to repair my shoulder done by Dr. Lyndon Gross in Creve Coeur, Missouri at Ortho Mo. There's a surgical clinic out there. He did the surgery for me. So fast forward to now, how did the surgery go? Well, so this is kind of like a post-game or post-game report on the surgery. So it's difficult for me to assess how the surgery went completely because I've never been down this road before. And as a young, healthy person with a long history of exercise, I'm not really sure how fast and how much activity I'm supposed to be regaining right now. So I have some reservations with passing any judgment on how the surgery went. That said, the way that it feels to me, when I first was for 3 weeks, I was in a sling. I basically lived, I ate, I slept, everything, bathed, everything. After the surgery, I had to have my arm in a sling for 3 weeks per doctor's orders. I told the doc, by the way, that I'm going to be the best patient that you ever have. Here are the things that I want to achieve. I want to be doing this activity and this activity and this activity. That's my goal. I want to get back to doing all of those things. I need you, sir, to please build me a shoulder that can do those things. That's what I asked Dr. Lyndon Gross to do for me. And so when he gave me the post-operative requirement, stay in this, what we call an airplane splint, where my shoulder is abducted a certain amount and then slightly internally rotated a certain amount. It's a safe resting position for my left arm and doesn't risk the surgical repair site because they went in, he repaired my labrum, he repaired my rotator cuff, stapled all the pieces back where they're supposed to go, sutured the pieces back where they're supposed to go. And so that the surgical site can heal, 3 weeks in the sling, and then I can come out of the sling and start doing physical therapy, more specifically, passive range of motion at this phase that I am now. Is the majority of it is passive range of motion, meaning that my left arm is not an active participant, but my right arm and creative use of pulleys and tables and walls and stuff, I can passively take my left arm through a range of motion to begin stretching it and regaining flexibility, regaining mobility in my arm. I'm at that stage now where I can do passive range of motion within a certain window of distance. And I can do some active assistive, meaning my left arm kind of sort of plays along to do flexion, abduction, external rotation, but it's still mostly assisted through external means. My right arm, pulleys, mechanical things, et cetera, et cetera. So when I was first released from the sling, it was amazing to me how limited my range of motion was. And so, is that normal? I believe so. I'd spent weeks immobilized, basically. And now, as I'm doing regular daily range of motion stuff, the physical therapist that I worked with when I was released from the sling gave me the green light to spend 30 minutes in the morning mobilizing my shoulder every day and 30 minutes in the evening mobilizing my shoulder every day. So that's what I do. And I can say that every single day I feel increased range of motion. My shoulder feels more normal. It feels stronger. It feels better than it did before. And all of that is encouraging because especially like that first few days when I was released from the sling to start doing range of motion, it was incredible how limited my shoulder was. And there were definitely thoughts in my mind at that time. Am I ever going to get all of my range of motion back? Am I ever going to get full function of this thing back? Like my shoulder feels almost like an alien being affixed to my body. It feels distant from me. And so there was definitely some doubts there. Now, that said, since that time, every day I'm getting more mobility back. I'm feeling more capacity in the shoulder. I can do a little bit more with the shoulder. And that is encouraging. And it gives me at least an increasing sense of hope that the surgery may have gone really well and that is going to eventually deliver on its promise to give me all that function back. So where do we go from here? I've got a post-operative meeting with Dr. Gross this Thursday, and he'll take a look at my shoulder and give his assessment for how recovery is going. Am I on schedule? The next several months are going to be a patient, slow, steady ramp up in the flexibility of my shoulder, in the strength of my shoulder, in my allowance to use my shoulder for everyday activities. Again, right now, still at passive range and active assistive range of motion. But by week 8 post-operative, I believe I should be doing full active range type stuff. By week 12, I'll be doing strengthening exercises, which by the way is October. So I got a few milestones going forward from here. And this kind of outlines too, hopefully, if all goes well, where I'm going to be at certain time frames. So my goal, and according to the prescription from the doc, the PT so far, in October, I should be back to doing strengthening activities, resistive strengthening activities for my left shoulder. My hope is, and doc hasn't actually cleared this, but my hope is by December, I'm snowboarding again. And then according to all best available information, January 2026 is when I'll be able to return to live rolls and wrestling in submission grappling world. And so that is my hope and my aspiration to hit those markers. Resistive strengthening of my shoulder in October, snowboarding in December, live rolls and grappling by January 2026. So all thoughts and all prayers and well wishes and positive energy from you guys for my shoulder. I appreciate all of it. Thanks for sending those my way. And thanks for tuning in. Hopefully this helped to outline for those of you who are wondering what happened and then what's next. Hopefully I answered that in this episode. That's all I got. Till the next one, guys. Bye.
Thanks for listening to my dad's podcast. For more useful tools and guidance, go to CrossFitEdwardsville.com and feel free to like, share, subscribe, and leave your thoughts in the comment sections down below. See you in the next episode.